Welcome back. I'm Calvin Statue Fanatic here with another review, and today we're going to take a look at a really cool piece. This is the Hobgoblin, one of Marvel's premier collection pieces, resin statue that is. But this is the first review I've done since I got back from Comic-Con, man. That was an amazing experience. If you guys have not been to Comic-Con, put it on your bucket list at least once. Experience it. Is really, really awesome. San Diego, the weather alone will make you want to move there. But let's get back to the review of this particular piece. Like I said, this is a Hobgoblin. I'm probably going to get tongue-tied a number of times trying to say this. I don't know why. This particular character is hard for me to pronounce. But anyway, Hobgoblin. I would call this collecting on a budget, but I've decided to kind of change up how I speak about statues. I know I've talked about collecting on a budget, you know, affordable pieces that you can collect and not break the bank, and that's great. But my friend Chad has another take on this, and I kind of think I want to transition to identifying pieces in a different way. He says, collect what you like, not the hype. And that covers so much from these slab comics, because my boy Chad's got me back into reading comics more regularly. And then you get pieces like this that are, you know, $135 that are really affordable. And then you get other pieces that are, you know, cost a lot more. And I'm not knocking anybody, but I don't want any collector who collects things that are not as expensive as those pieces to think that they're collecting something less valuable in terms of the joy that it brings to you. So I'm going to say from now on, collect what you like, not the hype, right, Chad? This is Sculpting by the amazing Jean St. Jean. And what's really cool and interesting about Jean St. Jean is one of my favorite sculptors. Two, one of my favorite pieces that he's ever sculpted was Moon Knight. This is probably my next favorite piece. But I got a chance to spend some time with him, like chatted up with him a little bit at San Diego. Really, really cool, super friendly guy, really awesome. He was on a panel with Diamond Select and some other artists and creators, and got to ask a few questions about his career and things that he's doing. As you guys know, we had him on the show once, and it was a really cool show that we did with him. But this was really cool as well, because one of the topics that came up was traditional sculpting versus digitally sculpting statues. So as far as Gene is concerned, he has been a traditional sculptor all his life. I mean, he pretty much anything you've seen from Gene has always been traditionally sculpted. And so we were asking that question, and he said that he's starting to get into ZBrush and digital sculpting as well. However, this piece is still hand sculpted. And I tell you, man, an amazing piece. I understand why artists are going to the digital sculpting and everything with time, deadlines, efficiency. Just, it's probably technology is technology and time moves on. I get it. But I hope this art form doesn't die altogether, because I do think there is a distinct difference between the two. Probably I don't know. I can just look at a piece and say, hey, that was hand sculpted, almost as if you can see the artist's fingerprints in the work itself. So I hope he still does a few things every now and then that are traditionally sculpted. But yeah, pretty much everybody's going digital these days. But let's get back to this piece, man. Like I said, this is a really, really awesome piece. I unboxed it already. I was going to do an unboxing, but you guys know how I feel about unboxing. It's a premiere box, and it came with a letter of authenticity. This is 62 of 3,000. That was on the box as well. And anyway, let's do it once around so you can actually see what this guy looks like, man. This is freaking awesome, dude. The Hobgoblin. Now, before we get into the actual statue, a little bit about who the Hobgoblin is and how he came to be. So you can see I have an issue right here. This is issue 238 of Amazing Spider-Man from 1983. What's interesting is the cover of this is actually this statue, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But about the Hobgoblin. In this particular issue, you have Peter Parker, Aunt May, and Aunt May's love interest, or I mean her beau, because, you know, Uncle Ben's dead at this point. They're walking down the sidewalk, and you have these three criminals that just come careening around the corner. They've just robbed the bank, I think, and they almost kill all three of them. Spider-Man, Peter Parker, springs into action, pursues the guys in a chase. He ends up catching up with them, ends up catching three of them. A fourth gets away. This fourth criminal escapes from Spider-Man through a manhole or sewer down in the sewers, and of course Spider-Man pursues him. Right at the point where Spider-Man is about to capture this criminal, Spider-Man decides that he's going to give up. He's so close in the panel in the comics to catching him, but Spider-Man doesn't know this. I'm not surprised why his spider sense didn't go off and let him know, or his spider tingle. But anyway, Peter tingle, or whatever. But it didn't. So Peter Parker, Spider-Man just decides to give up and let the guy get away. He says, let the police catch him. So this guy wanders further in the sewer, right? And he comes across the Green Goblin's lair, secret lair. At this point in the comics, the Green Goblin is dead. He's no longer. So he stumbles across all of the Green Goblin's technology, his suits, everything that the Green Goblin left behind, this guy finds. So he calls up a friend, and I won't say who that friend is just yet. He calls up a friend and tells him what he's found. That friend comes down, is amazed at all of this tech and everything that the Green Goblin has left behind. But because this guy has his own sinister plans, he ends up blowing up his friend in a van, killing his friend, and he confiscates all of the Green Goblin stuff, blows up the place where the Green Goblin's lair was, and so he takes all this stuff back, enhances the uniform, the outfit. Mind you, this guy had no previous experience in science or anything like that, but the comic never really talks about how this particular person was so smart all of a sudden. He's a fashion designer, by the way. So his name is actually Roderick Kingsley. He became the Hobgoblin, but he comes up with chemical formulas to enhance the strength of the Hobgoblin because he can't beat Spider-Man in their first battle. All this stuff, despite the fact that he's never had any formal training in science or anything. But I digress. Anyway, that is basically how the Hobgoblin comes to be. And what's interesting about that is that this character, his identity in the comics to the reader is not revealed for years and years. And over that time, a number of other people have donned the costume and called themselves the Hobgoblin. Now that you know a little bit about the Hobgoblin, let's talk about this particular issue. This slab here is the story that I just told you is from this particular comic, 238 in March. And so what's really interesting and what these have in common is that Jean St. Jean took the image from the cover here and basically translated it into this statue. As you can see, that the cover here has a Hobgoblin ripping Spider-Man's suit apart, and that is exactly what's happening here. This is a 3D representation of that particular comic. Now, let's talk about the statue itself. I'll do it once around so you guys can just see the awesomeness of this particular sculpt. I tell you, man, this would, delight any collector's heart. I mean, even in a quarter scale, a third scale, it doesn't matter. This is just a fantastic sculpt of this character. And he did such a great job translating the cover of the comic into this. Now, let's talk a little bit about this portrait. My God, look how sinister this guy looks. This is freaking amazing. The paint on it is great. The shading is great on it. His eyes with that orange glow, fantastic. The teeth, the growl, the grimace, everything, and even the painting with the shading on his face just looks amazing. And as you go down to the rest of his body, you can see his costume there. There's a lot of detail and sculpting in the costume with the belt that's across his chest holding the pouch. His legs, his suit here. There is just a ton of detail and texture in his suit. He has this reptilian type scale on this blue blue part of his suit here, and it's very, very nice shading and coloring on it as well. And then as we turn around, same thing, just really, really nicely done in terms of the sculpting and the detail of this particular piece. Looking here on top, the cape, the sculpt and the design in the cape looks really amazing as well, with the torn and battered holes that are in the cape. You can see that from the photos. The sculpt of Spider-Man's suit being ripped apart also looks freaking phenomenal. And then as you go down to the base, this base is painted in this brushed silver metal tone that looks really awesome. And at the front here, you have this demon-like hobgoblin symbol with the horns coming out of his head. You have that right there. That looks cool. And then what's really cool about the smoke that's coming from the thrusters from this rocket here, as you turn this around, the smoke, there's this undertoning of fire. You can see the hints of oranges, but as you turn it around and the lights here capture this, it looks like the fire is pulsating under the smoke. This is how the Green Goblin smoke should have been done on the Sideshow's premium format piece, where the hottest part is coming out of the thruster. And then as it cools down, you can see the fire underneath the smoke. And then you can see the dirt and the dust that is kicking up. Fantastic. Now you might say, is there anything wrong with the statue at all? Pretty much no. The only thing that I found on it was on the back. Here you have the belt. It's a brown belt, but the paint wasn't done as neat and as clean as it is on all the rest of the parts of the statue. And there's a small piece of blue paint that's touching this orange. I'm nitpicking right now, guys. The paint job is really done really well, except for that belt. And you can't tell because the tones and the shading in the orange costume has brown tones and shading, so it doesn't stand out. It's just that once you start taking pictures and you zoom in, you can see any type of imperfections. But again, the standout feature of this is this portrait. This is an amazing, amazing portrait of this particular character, and does such a great job translating him from the comic book. One of my favorite pieces from the Premiere collection so far. Diamond Select again keeps knocking it out of the park. So that pretty much concludes my review of the Hobgoblin Marvel Premiere's resin statue sculpted by the amazing Jean St. Jean. And if you want to stay on top of the latest in the world of collecting, please head over to mcecentral.com. That's Marvel's Collectible and Entertainments, where you can find some of the coolest reviews, latest unboxings of some of your favorite pop culture characters. You're going to find me, Chad, Seth, JR, and George over there just doing our thing. So until next time, my friends, peace.